Hi guys, so today's going to be a bit of a roundup video. So when I was at the shops recently, I do my usual thing, which is that I sneakily take pictures of the front of magazines when they pertain to Meghan or Harry, because I've been documenting for a really long time. I think for about a period about 2 years now. I've got so much of that stuff documented, so at some point when I get a long space of time to do this, I'm going to try and get them all together and maybe make a great big video essay where we look at as many as possible. And I won't even have been able to get them all, but just every time I saw a weird one, I took a picture, a sneaky picture. But this has been from the past couple of days, so I just thought it might give a good idea for anyone who's not in Britain, in the UK. This is kind of what we're used to. And if you're a fellow Brit like me, I thought it might be interesting to just kind of go through these kind of things that we're just exposed to so often. And I honestly feel like the tabloids are so bad and the gossip magazines are so bad at this point that we just don't even consider sometimes how bad it is. I think we're just so used to it that we just kind of tune it out. But I think these things are worth looking at. So just a couple of things before we start. I think you guys will probably know from my content or my social media, I'm a left-winger. I'm a lefty, and I do a podcast with two amazing leftists who are incredibly knowledgeable with a lot of really valuable things to say. So it's a really great learning experience for me. If you're somebody who's interested in a sort of leftist podcast, then I'm going to put the link to our newest one in the description box. There's a video with this one. They don't all have videos. So yeah, but that's there. And I think it might be of interest to, well, it might be of interest to anyone who's kind of interested in abuse dynamics, smear campaigns. I talk a lot in these videos where I talk about the treatment of Meghan and Harry, about how there's so many parallels between what's happening with them and what happened to Jeremy Corbyn, who was the former leader of the Labour Party. I believe that these oppressive systems are all kind of linked and they all work via the same playbook. So if we think about how Harry and Meghan are kind of being held up as these avatars of what's progressive and woke, etc., that's why everyone has to tear them down, by the way, because they've been made these avatars to basically scare anyone else who wants to question institutions or people with power, to basically scare them, right, and make them feel like they're going to be humiliated. And a really similar thing happened with Jeremy Corbyn, who was the leader of the Labour Party. It's really interesting to look at how these smear campaigns work, and all these really weird things they do to discredit a person, so that a person becomes a sort of monster in the public eye, but the evidence doesn't back it up. But by the time you refute the evidence, you know, with actual facts, the initial smear has stayed in the mind, which I think is really a similar thing which is happening with Harry and Meghan. You know, they'll say something completely outlandish, completely libelous about Harry and Meghan, which doesn't make any sense and is just completely pantomime villain. And sure, you can look that up and you can say, well, that doesn't make sense because clearly, you know, there's no evidence to support that. But the thing is, the initial smear was so loud that people just going about their lives, you know, who've been listening to the radio or watching This Morning or going to the shops and seeing magazine covers, in their mind that sticks. The initial smear always sticks. Even if there's some sort of retraction, it's never as loud. It's like when they say something completely ridiculous about Meghan in the paper, and occasionally they might have to print an apology. That doesn't happen very often, or as often as it should, but the apology is not as loud as the headline. And people have their biases anyway. They'll be more willing to, because they've bought into the pantomime villain Meghan thing, which has been going on for years and years, kind of subconscious in the background, on the news, in the papers, you know, like when you go out shopping, they're more likely to still remember the smear. And that's a very similar thing that's happening with Jeremy Corbyn. I will make a proper video about those parallels and how these smear campaigns kind of work to monster a person that seems to threaten any sort of traditional institution with power. You know, they do it to high profile figures like Jeremy Corbyn and Harry and Meghan, but also it's relevant to our lives because if you're like a whistleblower in a family, if you're a truth teller in an abuse system, then you're also going to be treated in the same way. And I feel like that's why I'm so interested in this Harry and Meghan situation, because it really reflects what I've seen happening not only in family systems, in domestic violence, in dysfunctional family systems, but in all of our institutions basically. And it's incredibly powerful, and one of the only ways you can kind of arm against it is to get knowledgeable about how the systems work. So yeah, if you're interested in listening to the podcast, you can get it where, I think you can pretty much get it anywhere podcasts are available, but you can also get them on YouTube. I'll put the link in the description box. Some of them have videos, some of them don't, but if you're interested in that kind of wider idea of why I'm interested in it and why it also reflects what's going on politically here and how the left is being silenced, and it's a very similar process, you might be interested in that. Oh, and the second thing is, I thought I might as well, since I've got a lot of you guys here, so as well as being a YouTuber, I feel uncomfortable with saying I'm a YouTuber anyway. I'm just someone who makes videos in my room, really. But as well as doing that, I also make music. So yes, I do have a music channel. You might have seen there's links in the description box to that. But if you just type in Claudia Boleyn music, I do a ton of covers, and I've actually got a lot of stuff coming. I think probably over the next couple of months I'm going to be releasing lots of different things. If you have an interest in seeing me sing or hearing me sing, then yeah. It's on the other channel, and I'll put a link in the description box. And I write my own stuff, and I do covers as well. I also take requests. I can do requests. Okay, so let's get to it. Heat magazine is going to be our first one. So the cover of Heat magazine, on the front is Kate, and it says in quotation marks, really big, "How dare they? Her fury as the Sussexes stoop to a new low." And in the background, you can kind of see a picture of Harry and Meghan just smiling together. And it's really interesting how a lot of these magazines, I think, and if I make the long video, I'll be able to show you the pattern of this. There's this kind of feeling that it's aimed at white women, right? It's aimed, Kate is supposed to be their avatar. Kate is meant to represent them. Kate is meant to represent all these different things. And she can only do that because she doesn't say very much. But then if you point out that she doesn't say very much, then they think you're attacking her. But that's the truth. They project onto Kate Middleton, right? Kate Middleton is the dignified, English, stiff upper lip, white woman, right? And I think a lot of people have been conditioned to project onto her. And that's why she's taught, and the system doesn't really want her to speak. Because the moment she starts speaking, people are going to start realising, wait a minute, you know, she's actually not representative of me, she's just a person. But in my theory, Kate Middleton is currently the self-insert character for a lot of borderline racist white women. That's my opinion. And as well as being inaccurate, because I don't believe that's a direct quote. You know, if you think about just propaganda-wise, the way this is being positioned, like Kate is being tricked, she's scandalised, like how could they do that to me? There they are in the background, like conspiring against her. Her fury as they stoop to a new low. So it's not unbiased, like it's basically saying, by using stoop to a new low, implies that they've already stooped to many lows, and now they're going even lower. So it's not very subtle. I should also say that a lot of these women's magazines are really responsible for a lot of negative feeling that a lot of women have about ourselves, I think. Certainly me growing up, and I'm not immune to it, like I try to be immune to it, but I'm really not. You know, they're always covered in scandalous stories about divorces and women who have been cheated on, or who've had some sort of tragedy happen to them, or who have put on weight, because wow, that's the worst thing a woman can do, eh? You know, or they're printing pictures of a random female celebrity with no makeup on, like just walking down the street and trying to act like, oh look, they're having a breakdown, look, they're not wearing makeup, look, we're taking pictures of them while they're out to get a coffee. They're so parasitic, and I think women who work for these publications, they've essentially decided to turn against other women and make money from the fact that women are made to feel insecure about themselves, and it just make the world a more horrible place. You know, they're very tabloidy, these things. There was another one which I don't think I managed to snap the cover of. I had to be careful, I was being covert doing this. I'm sure that they thought that I was a thief. I'm sure they thought I did, because, you know, I kind of like, you know, creeping around like, oh quick, I'll get a quick picture of the front of the magazine. I'm sure I'm on their list. I'm sure they think I'm stealing things. It doesn't help that I wear a mask when I'm in the supermarket, and I don't always wear makeup. You know, I wear makeup in videos sometimes, but I can't usually. I'm not always bothered to wear makeup, and I think there's definitely a case that they treat me differently when I'm wearing the mask, not wearing the makeup. I look more foreign, if that makes sense. Like, I do look more foreign in that sense, and they definitely, like, not just the fact that I'm out there, you know, taking the occasional picture of the front of a magazine, but they for sure, when I'm not wearing my makeup and when they don't hear my voice, they for sure think I'm dodgy, right? And I feel like there are slight racial things there. I was talking to my mum about that recently, because my mum's white, and she's noticed it as well. You know, sometimes they don't realise that we're together, and it will almost be like they're like watching me. That's kind of irrelevant, but I guess it's not irrelevant, because I guess that's part of why I feel like I have such solidarity with Meghan Markle. Our lives are entirely different, and I probably won't agree with her on everything. Like, you know, even the idea of marrying into the monarchy for me isn't right. Like, I don't like the idea of the monarchy, but I can see that woman is being attacked, basically abused, essentially. I think Tyler Perry said it, didn't he? That she's being, it's like domestic abuse, and it is. It's exactly like that on a really public scale. And something else they're using apart from sexism is racism. And they're actually also gaslighting her on it, because they're saying, oh, but you're not that dark, so how can it be racism? And it makes me want to scream, because I'm someone who looks a lot lighter. You know, people will sometimes know that I'm mixed, they won't know what the mix is. So you do get gaslit a lot, and sometimes I want to scream, and I want to say, like, no, I can attest to what she's saying. It makes perfect sense. I'm in the same boat. I think if you ask a lot of biracial people who are kind of paler skinned, they'll be able to explain exactly what she's saying. But of course they don't want to hear explanations because they just want to gaslight her and paint her as a villain. They don't actually want to hear people talking about that. But this other magazine cover, on the front, it said something like, "Will the royals sue Harry?" or "Royals to sue Harry" or something. I don't really know how they get away with it on their covers. I think if they put like a question mark on the cover, then they can get away with saying anything they want, like it's just a question. And this was, for me, this is quite a sinister turn that this is taking. So something that often happens with abuse victims. So in our country, it's different to the US, because I've actually had conversations about this kind of thing with people from the US. So in our country, the law is really quite dodgy and skewed. I mean, in a lot of countries it is. It's obviously made to protect power. And we've got a thing in this country where it's really difficult for whistleblowers to speak about their experiences because there's the possibility that their abusers will try to sue them, right? So that's another form of abuse and control. And I've seen people saying this about Harry, you know, and it's really worrying because you need to take away the fact that Harry has got quite a lot of resources. You mean, he has, for sure. That doesn't make it okay that he has to put up with it. But this is a message going out to every single victim and survivor, right? Every single time people are saying, oh, we shouldn't be airing his dirty laundry, he's disloyal, he's traitorous, he's whining, they don't understand that, like, there will absolutely definitely be in their lives somebody who is in Harry's situation, but they haven't been able to talk about it. And maybe the reason they're not talking about it is because they've heard these people saying these things about Harry, and they're thinking, oh no, like, what if they say that about me? And I don't think it's because people are bad. I don't think it's that. I think it's because they don't understand the abuse dynamics at all. But it's really interesting. So this article is about, will the royals sue Harry? Like, will William and Kate and Camilla sue Harry? Which I don't know if they could or not. I mean, I think they probably could. I don't think it would make them look good. I think that's one of the only things, is it will not make them look good because it will make them look like they're silencing. I also think it wouldn't look good for them because it seems like what they're doing is trying to keep a lot of their stuff that they're doing on the down low, right? They don't want people to know about it. And I think if it did become a case, I think Harry said he's got more evidence and could speak about more, and I'm sure he has. So I think they're definitely going to be concerned about that coming out. So I don't think they would sue. But the fact that the paper is saying this itself, you know, this magazine has put this on the front, think about all, especially, right, so this is a women's magazine, you know, or it's marketed towards women anyway. Now, if you think about domestic violence and abuse, and you think about how disproportionately it impacts women, right? And that's not to say that men aren't victims of domestic violence, because they 100% are. They are. A lot of men are victims of domestic violence, and we live in a society where we don't really necessarily validate male victims. We're not very good at identifying it. But it happens so much to women, you know, the sort of women who will be reading this magazine, right, and will be seeing this. And they're going to be thinking twice. They're going to be thinking, like, you know, it's not... I wish people understood how much victims fear that kind of situation, right? Because this is a tactic abusers use. So I don't even think the royal family in this case have actually said they're going to do it. But it's actually painting them in a really bad light. So well done to this magazine for managing to try and smear Harry and also making the royals look even worse. And then there's Closer magazine. This is a really great example of how... I don't understand. So it's actually got Holly Willoughby on the front as well. Now, I'm not a fan of Holly Willoughby. She is the presenter of This Morning, that, along with Philip Schofield, skipped the queue when Elizabeth was lying in state, and she got a lot of stick for that. But I think she's very enabling. Like, I don't like her, I've got to be honest. I don't know her. Maybe in person she is, but to me she feels complicit, and like she doesn't stand up for things, and I don't have a lot of tolerance for people who are like that. I do in actual life, you know, it's very difficult in life, but if you're making money from it and being silent and supporting things which aren't right, then I feel like you should say something, especially when you've got the level of fame that she has and the power that would come with it. But anyway, but it just shows that you can't win the game, and it backs up Harry's point, which I agree with, which is that you don't play with the tabloids. Like, you don't get into deals with them, because they're an abusive system and they will turn on you and they are using you, and then they will further go on and hurt other people. Because Holly Willoughby's career kind of is improved in some ways by these sort of tabloid readers, because they kind of look up to her. She's another sort of self-insert in some ways. But on the front, the other woman making Holly insecure, and like I said before, you know, a picture of Holly, you know, not really wearing her makeup, or maybe she is, maybe she's just out and she's just been caught looking somewhere. I mean, she still looks pretty beautiful to me, but you know, they're trying to show she's falling apart. Everyone, let's consume the fact that she's falling apart. And then beside her, Meghan, with Split Crisis. Meghan and Harry's fallout. They're not talking. Regrets and rows are tearing them apart. I'd be interested to know how on earth they even... Why do they think that? I'd be really interested to know where they got their information from. Like, where are you getting that from? I'm pretty sure that Meghan and Harry aren't secretly or unsecretly giving information to Closer magazine. And I seriously doubt their friends are. So this is just another arm of the abuse, basically. So something I've seen happening very recently, because I'm trying to keep track of every little wave, right? Every change in this system. Because what we're seeing here is something that's kind of unheard of. Because we're actually seeing people fight back against the system. And I feel like that's why I'm rooting for them so much, because they really won't back down. You know, they are taking on the tabloids. And what we are seeing is the tabloids and these kind of like gossip magazines fighting for their lives here. And they've kind of hit a force that won't be stopped, which frightens them, obviously. But what they're now trying to do is to make their narrative that, look, they aired their dirty laundry and now karma's come for them because they're splitting up. And they've got no evidence of this. You know, I've seen people saying about Meghan that, oh, see, look, she's discarding him now. I saw a video, and I've seen various videos of people who are supposedly, they talk about like narcissistic abuse or abuse systems, that kind of thing. And these people who would consider themselves to be very reasonable, rational people have actually decided, some of them, that Meghan is a narcissist in her discard phase because she's not promoting the book with Harry. And these people actually think that they have a leg to stand on. You know, anything she does will be used against her. She cannot win in this system, right? So if she accompanies Harry on this tour, bear in mind she's also a mother, she's got young kids. If she accompanies him, people will say she's making him do it, she's in control of him. And this is Harry's story, right? I've almost finished Spare now, and I'm going to do a big review of it. But this is Harry's story about his life. Now, if she was there the whole time, people would have said, look, she's puppeteering him. Look, she's made him write it. But she hasn't shown up. She hasn't made that appearance. She's not playing into their game. So now they've twisted it again to say that, look, she's devaluing and discarding him. Somehow she's abusing him by not being present on his book tour. You know, it's like a soap opera, isn't it? It's like, oh, look, they're not talking. Based on what? Based on the fact that Meghan will not play your game and will not be papped and will not allow you to use her image. So they're resorting to using random old images of her and just trying to create drama. Right, anything they can. That's the story, isn't it? The tabloid kind of fairy tale story has to have a wicked witch, like a wicked villain, like it's the Tudor era, which is Meghan, and now she's got to have her comeuppance. But that's not happening because she's strong and because Harry seems to be strong as well, and they're a united front. So now they're having to engineer her downfall for their story. So it's like, look, see, she's getting her comeuppance. It's all lies. It's all complete lies. Now, there's one thing that I want to make a specific video on its own about, but it's basically a big spread. Let me find it. And it's a picture of Kate, and it says, leave my kids out of it. So one of the latest smears is somehow implying that Harry and Meghan are now attacking their niece and nephews, which is not something they're doing, not something they've done. I've almost finished the book. There's nothing like that in it. But again, it's like in the book itself, you know, Harry talks about how when Meghan had her wedding, she had Lily of the Valley. I think that was Diana's favourite flower or something. And it was presented, I think it was by The Express, as though she was personally trying to, like, murder Charlotte or put her in danger because she'd used Lily of the Valley, because they're poisonous to children if children eat them. So there was that, and I couldn't believe I was reading this, you know. The kind of basic article here, let me see if I can get a tiny bit of it. I don't have much of it. Right, so it says, fresh outrage for the Prince and Princess of Wales as Harry wades in on their children's future. And it talks about parental instinct, you know, to film an overwhelming sense of protectiveness towards your children. So the idea is that Harry is now apparently, in their minds, attacking the children, which he hasn't done, but they're basically trying to whip the public into a frenzy, to whip mothers into a frenzy, to now make out that Harry and Meghan are attacking the kids. How are they doing this? Because Harry has spoken about how he's worried that the children are in a system where one of them's going to end up as the spare, like he is. A perfectly reasonable and compassionate thing for an uncle to be worried about, knowing the trauma that he and William went through, right? But they've turned this into an attack. Watch how they do this. So now it's Meghan and Harry are attacking the children, especially Charlotte. And I've seen a lot of stuff recently online where people are just, I don't even know how to explain it at this point. It's like they're writing their own narrative for fun. It's like it's a fun thing they're doing. They've now decided that Meghan has it out for Charlotte, and that the real reason that Meghan had to leave was because she was caught secretly taking pictures of a sleeping Charlotte and trying to sell them to the press, right? There's no evidence for this. It's pure fiction, right? They've just made this up in their minds. But they're just believing it. You know, there's people hyping themselves into it, like, yeah, I can believe it. I can believe that she's secretly taking pictures of the child to secretly sell. Why? It doesn't make sense. I feel like I'm going crazy even having to address it. But it doesn't make sense, does it? Why would she do that? It would be obvious who taken the pictures. The pictures would then get out there into the public domain and people would say, why did you do that? She was marrying into the royal family. She didn't need that small amount of money to sneak pictures of her niece, did she? But that is something I definitely want to address, because as part of the Wicked Witch stereotype, they are now trying to make Meghan into somebody who, like, has a specific thing and is trying to attack Charlotte. And it's not lost on me, right, that they are using an innocent white little girl. They accuse Harry of dragging Charlotte into this, which he's not done. Right, he's not done that at all. The only time she's been mentioned is Kate's thing about Charlotte's dress not being right or being too big or whatever. That's also been spun as if Harry sharing that is somehow putting Charlotte at risk of bullying. No, to normal human beings, why is that against Charlotte? They're trying to reach for anything they can. And again, they're deflecting, because what Harry and Meghan are doing is calling out an abusive system. So what does the abusive system do? It closes ranks and it does Darvo, right? Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. So now they're trying to make out that Harry and Meghan are the abusers. It's textbook. But if you look at what they're doing with Meghan and Charlotte specifically, a lot of people believe this because of racism, right, and racial bias in their minds, and they're seeing it as Meghan, this foreign, like, jealous, spiteful, bitter, angry biracial woman who's trying to attack this pure white angelic child, right? And they, in their own minds, they're bringing an innocent child into it. I don't know why they've got to create some fantasy of Charlotte, this beautiful white child, being attacked by this biracial woman. That they're bringing her in. They're the ones bringing her into this. That's an innocent child. And that in itself, ironically, is kind of what Harry talks about. You know, when he's saying he knows someone's going to be made into the spare or the scapegoat, he also is aware that they're all being made part of a soap opera. So in order to bring Meghan down, all this stuff's now being put out about Charlotte and people are going along with it. And that's an actual child. That is an actual innocent child who is now being held up and used. Her innocence is being used as a way to attack her biracial aunt, right? And she never consented to that. You know, it's not her fault. Obviously, racists are going to do that. Racists are going to say, look at this pure, white, beautiful child and look at what this evil black woman is doing to her, right? Because that's the vibe. But Charlotte hasn't consented to that. And again, it's Darvo, because what they're now trying to present is, rather than Harry calling out a system in which the children of the system are abused, and I'm sorry to say it, but it's true, the system is abusive. The system denies them their individuality, it puts them under extreme pressure, right? They're constantly monitored all the time. They're not allowed to be themselves. They have to opt out of things. They have to ask permission to be individuals. They're under such high scrutiny. I'm surprised that anyone in that system even survives it. But in terms of the Darvo going on here, so Harry's calling out that system, and now because of Darvo, they are positioning him and Meghan as the ones that are now somehow abusing the children, when actually what they're saying is they're concerned about the environment, not just for those children, but for everyone in it, because they want to make it better. So also there's a vibe in the sort of magazines and papers I'd seen that the kind of royals are keeping a dignified silence, right? So they're not reacting, you know. Meghan and Harry are these awful, awful people, and they're staying above it, you know. And that's how, you know, and it's not unbiased, right? If it was really unbiased, it would be, there's no comment from them, they're quiet. That's a neutral statement, isn't it, that they're being silent? That's not how it's being sold. It's being sold that they are being dignified, right? They're doing the right thing. They're the mature ones, and look at Harry and Meghan, look at all the trouble they're making. That's the vibe. So this is kind of all over the place as a video. I don't really know how to title it. I guess just like a roundup of some headlines and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to look at that. And I probably will in more detail. I might start doing this more often, you know, if every couple of weeks I see some things and kind of put them together in a video. But I love you loads. If you're struggling with, I've noticed that a lot of people have got in touch with me via Twitter, for example, having watched my stuff, and I've had some really nice private messages and DMs. People who understand like the domestic violence dynamics, basically who understand how this stuff works, who are kind of sharing their own feelings and how they've kind of gravitated towards this because of that. I'm very interested in that. I think that survivors of these systems are pretty good at picking up on them when they see them, which can be really upsetting because people who haven't lived them they don't have that knowledge, and it's just really horrible and draining to even have to explain it to people, you know. But to those people, you're doing really well, you have my full support. I get how you're feeling, like I do get how difficult it is, but things will change eventually, and it might be slow, but they will change. So I love you guys loads, hope you're doing okay, and I'll see you really soon. All right, love you, bye.